Welcome back to another video on the YouTube channel. Now then, this is a video for Patreon members and YouTube. If you are a Patreon member, then you will know that the last video I uploaded yesterday, I was in a bit of a foul mood and maybe a bit of tiredness from Preston. Obviously, the result didn't help as well. And just hopefully, excuse me, better. I'm in a better mood today. I'm feeling excited for the weekend's game against Newcastle, just looking forward to a busy week ahead as well. We're also going to the under-21s tomorrow night. It's Stevenage. They are playing Tottenham, and then there's two under-21 games on Tuesday next week and Friday next week before going to Nottingham Forest. So plenty of football. In fact, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games in the next 9 days. Excuse me. Right, let's get into it. For those of you who haven't subscribed to the Patreon, that is why you should subscribe. Daily Fulham content, and because there's so much football, there's so much to talk about, and obviously under 21s content as well, which is really niche and not seen much in the Fulham space. So £5 a month for daily Fulham content, plus regular chat with the community who can put in their suggestions of what sort of content they want to see and discussions about. There was a big old discussion yesterday about this Fulham team, the fact that we lost to Preston. But any Newcastle fans watching, you'll be thinking, let's just get on with the preview. Let's just get on with the preview. Fulham v Newcastle, now a fixture that is not making me feel very good. This is a Newcastle team who are unbeaten already so far at the start of the season. That includes a win over Nottingham Forest on penalties in the Carabao Cup. They go to AFC Wimbledon next week. But before that, they go to Craven Cottage. Now, it's been a strange start for Newcastle because although they're unbeaten, I have to say, and maybe Newcastle fans will say as well, they haven't played at their scintillating best so far this season. 1-0 win against Southampton. Southampton were down to 10 men. Excuse me. Newcastle were down to 10 men. Fabian Schär. 1-1 draw to Bournemouth, where Bournemouth scored a last-minute winner, which I think should have counted. Oh, well, it didn't. And Newcastle got a point, so 1-1. Then they did beat Tottenham in the Premier League. Again, 2-1. Didn't play at their best, but nor did Spurs. So, okay. And then a 2-1 win over Wolverhampton Wanderers, where they came back from behind after Mario Lemina had scored, former Fulham player, of course. And then the goals came from Fabian Schär and Harvey Barnes. I said it was Gordon yesterday on a different video. That was wrong. It was Fabian Schär. Fantastic goal. Fantastic goals, should I say. And Newcastle have started the season on paper very well, but maybe if you look a little bit deeper in terms of performance levels, not as well as some may have wanted. So let's have a look at that team that played against Wolverhampton Wanderers. In goal was Nick Pope. At the back was Lewis Hall, Dan Burn, Fabian Schär, and Livramento. In midfield, Joe Linton, Guimaraes, Longstaff up front, Gordon, Murphy, and down the middle, Isak. They brought on Willock, Tonali, Barnes, Trippier, and Lloyd Kelly. Other subs were Dubravka, Emi Kraft, Almiron, and Usula. So, interesting. Let's just have a quickly look at the stats. 12-14 in terms of shots, 5-6 on target. It was fairly even in the end on paper if you look at the stats. But Newcastle took a while to get going in that game, and they did create a couple of decent chances in the first half. But Wolves obviously took the lead, and then obviously Newcastle came from behind to win the game. And if you look at the table, you look at the Premier League table now, Newcastle are now third on 10 points. And Fulham, of course, 12th with 5 points, should really have 7 if they hadn't had conceded late to West Ham. So let's just get into this game now, Fulham versus Newcastle. I'm currently looking at FOTMob. And in terms of injuries, it still says Vinicius is out with a knock. To be fair, that backs up what Marco Silva said last week when he said he'll be out for 8 to 10 days. Now then, I didn't know this. When we spoke yesterday on Fulhamish about Isak's injury, I did not know it was an eye injury, and he's doubtful for the game. It was reported that he wasn't in training or pictured in training yesterday. Callum Wilson is also out with a back injury, apparently. Lascelles, Lewis Miley is also out. And Sven Botman is also out as well. He's been out for a while. So, I mean, that is a major boost. I mean, a player like Isak, who's obviously the main striker, you don't have Callum Wilson. And suddenly I'm thinking, who on earth are Newcastle going to be playing down the middle? Will it be maybe Gordon? Maybe, I mean, Harvey Barnes, would he play down the middle? I don't necessarily think so. Joe Linton, would he play up front? No, surely not. Excuse me. He's obviously a midfielder, but Joe Linton obviously has played in a forward position before, hasn't he? So it's a bit of a tricky one for Newcastle if they don't have Isak. Just trying to think if there's anyone that they would play up front instead of him. I don't know how that's going to go necessarily. So if they don't have a recognised striker in Newcastle because of no Isak and no Wilson, let's just see if Isak. I mean, Isak might travel down. You never know, and he might be in the squad. But in terms of a starting 11, that will be very interesting to see. Let's talk about how I think this game is going to go. Obviously, Fulham losing in midweek was a massive frustration. Obviously, on penalties as well. There were some positives from that game. Ryan Sessegnon had a really good second half performance, and Reece Nelson was really, really good as well. But we were missing Joachim Andersen. We were missing Robinson, Adama, Andres Pereira, all weren't involved. So I'm going to go with an unchanged team from the one that played against West Ham. Now, the reason I say that is because Nelson played quite a few minutes in the week. Obviously, Iwobi came off the bench. I would start Reece Nelson on the left and have Adama on the right. But I just feel as though he'll go over Iwobi, Marco Silva. He'll go over Iwobi over Nelson, then bring on Nelson at some point in the game. Obviously, Muniz started on Tuesday, wasn't fantastic. So yeah, I'm expecting maybe a similar lineup from Newcastle, and like I say, I'm very unsure about maybe Newcastle fans. In the comments below, you put in your comments if you are watching what you think Eddie Howe will do if there's no Alexander Isak in the team. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. I'm fearful. Fulham played Newcastle 3 times last season, lost 3-0, 2-0, and 1-0. With Newcastle winning all 3 games and Fulham not scoring whatsoever. And then the season before at Craven Cottage, Fulham were 1-0, down to 10 men after about 6 minutes through Nathaniel Chalobah's red card. For a Newcastle ran out 4-1 winners, and then at the St James's Park, I remember going all the way up there, Mitrovic taking a penalty and scoring a penalty, but of course it came off him twice, didn't count. And then the late winner came from, was it Isak? I can't actually remember. If I go head to head, I genuinely can't remember what happened. Who scored? It was Isak. God, that was late heartbreak, wasn't it? That was on Sky on a Sunday. Our record against Newcastle, in fact, is really, really bad. The previous games, going from last game backwards in terms of when Gomes won the game at Craven Cottage in April, 1-0 defeat, 2-0 defeat, 3-0 defeat, like we already mentioned, 1-0 defeat, 4-1 defeat, 2-0 defeat, 1-1 draw. And that was, of course, when I think Joachim Andersen got sent off, didn't he, in the lockdown season? Yeah, he did. Gosh, Fulham's team that day. I know this is sort of content I've done for Patreon before, but let's just go over that lineup quickly. Areola, Robinson, Tosin, Anderson, Ola Ayena, Lamina, Anguissa, Lookman, Kearney, Bobby Reid, Mitrovic. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Newcastle's team, Darlow, Yedlin, Federico Fernandez, goodness me, Kieran Clark, Dummett. I mean, this is only 4 years ago, and it feels like a lifetime ago. Matt Ritchie, Longstaff, Shelvey, Almiron, Wilson, Joe Linton. Like I say, Joe Linton did play in a forward position. I'm not getting that wrong. That is extraordinary. I didn't even look at the bench, to be fair. I mean, that would be quite fun if we just quickly looked at the bench for those games. I did this before the West Ham game. I went through loads of games back to 2010, but this is just extraordinary. Obviously, Steve Bruce and Scott Parker, the managers. Steve Bruce now at Blackpool and Scott Parker now at Burnley. On the bench let's start with Fulham. Michael Hector came off the bench, so did Loftus-Cheek, and did Joe Bryan. Other subs, Rodak, Adoy, Ream, Harrison Reed. who's obviously still at the club, and Abubakar Kamara. Bench for Newcastle. Isaac Hayden, who came off the bench. Dwight Gale came off the bench. Ryan Fraser came off the bench. Gillespie, Jamal Lewis was also on the bench. Emmy Kraft, who's obviously still around the squad. Jeff Hendrick, Jacob Murphy. And then listen to this, a man who yesterday signed for Bordeaux in the 4th tier of French football, Andy Carroll. Andy Carroll. Incredible. Should we just get on with how I think the game's going to go? In fact, I just want to see the last time Fulham actually beat Newcastle. God, our record against them is terrible. Previously, 4-0 defeat on the last day of the season against Newcastle. I think Shelby scored like a really nice goal from the edge of the area. I think, Rondon scored in that game as well. Perez. God, they scored 2 goals in 2 minutes. I don't remember that happening. I remember that first goal. 0-0 draw. Of course, I was at that game all the way in St James's Park. Abu Kamara basically going around the keeper, and then I think his boot fell off or something. The last time Fulham beat Newcastle was the game which basically put Sessegnon up in lights. 3-1 win. Kearney, Sessegnon, and obviously Daryl Murphy got the goal back. I mean, I went to that game. It was probably one of the best away games I've ever been to still now. And that was, goodness me, that was 7 years ago. Almost 7 years ago, but that is incredible. Obviously, Sessegnon's now back at the club. Played really well on Tuesday, like I said. I don't think this game's going to go. I think this is going to be really tricky. You know, Isak or no Isak, players who can hurt you. They have a lot of players who can hurt you. Harvey Barnes and Gordon, I fear. Murphy has really picked up his form of recent times for Newcastle as well. Joe Linton, obviously Tonali's back, Gamarish in the midfield, Longstaff. They've got some really, really good options. Newcastle, and I really do fear about this game. Fulham obviously need to get a positive result after a really tricky week. Maybe that is a bit of a boost, though. There are some injury concerns for Newcastle. Shah coming back from a suspension as well and scoring last week against Wolves will do wonders for his confidence. But like I said, I think Fulham will be unbeaten. I think Fulham will be unchanged from the game against West Ham. And I'm going to back us to get a result. I said it on Fulhamish yesterday. I think I said basically a draw wouldn't really... I don't know, this sounds kind of like arrogant and big-headed, but it's only because of circumstances. I'm not talking about the opposition we're playing. I'm talking about the fact that I feel shortchanged, basically, from the fact that we drew to West Ham when we should have seen the game through. And then obviously we lost to Preston. So basically, yes, a draw I think would be a positive result depending on the game state and circumstances and stuff. But also I just would love it if Fulham could win, because personally, if Fulham were to win, it'd be a little bit of a sigh of relief. Going, oh, well, thank God we got the win, because we've had a terrible few days conceding late and losing on pens to Preston. I'm going to go Fulham are going to win by 2-0. Now, Newcastle fans watching obviously disagree with me, and that's absolutely fine. The game is all about opinions, and I've got to back my team. But I think Fulham will win by 2-0, and I think we'll see goals. Like I say, I'm going to just repeat myself from Fulhamish. Goals from Smith Rowe and Nelson off the bench, either side of the half. I'm not discrediting Newcastle as an opposition. I know they're unbeaten. I know they're a very, very good, very good team, and they'll have high ambitions of returning to European football this season. And after seeing Aston Villa, dismantle young boys on Tuesday night, Newcastle fans will be thinking, God, how unlucky were we to get PSG, AC Milan, and God, who else was in it? Borussia Dortmund. Was it Dortmund? Yeah, in our group. That was unlucky, wasn't it? There was some really good games. Obviously, beating PSG at home was huge. And Newcastle obviously fell short. And obviously, it's a new Champions League format now. Anyway, I'm getting away from the point. The point being that Newcastle will obviously come with a game plan. Eddie Howe, they're very, very hard to play. And I've noticed over obviously the last few times we played Newcastle, when Fulham have been on top or when Newcastle haven't been up to par, they do this thing where the goalkeeper goes down. And when a goalkeeper goes down, you basically have to stop play because it's the goalkeeper, right? And he's not really injured. He's just using it as a sort of tactical distraction to get Eddie Howe, to get the players over to Eddie Howe, where I remember it happening at the Cottage last season. It happened at St James's Park 2 seasons ago when Mitch missed that penalty. He basically gets the players around and say, what we're doing, we're really, really under par here, and let's change a few tactical things. And I think it's under the realms of dark arts of English football, of the Premier League rules. But it's obviously it's an interesting tactic to deploy, and it's not necessarily against the rules, but it's a way around them. It's like bending the rules slightly. Not saying that they should be punished in terms of by the league for it. It's just one of those things that's not very well refereed. If he's, it's happened twice, and I'm guessing it's happened in games before with Newcastle, not just against Fulham as well. So yeah, I mean that's really it in terms of the preview. I mean, if we just look at Newcastle's numbers this season in terms of, I want to have a look at that performance against Tottenham, because I remember watching the game and not being absolutely blown away by the performance. But yeah, they're playing a very similar team, and Emmy Kraft obviously coming in for Fabian Schär. Dan Burn obviously getting the goal, or scoring an own goal. Sorry, I saw the little icon next to him. Thought he scored. He didn't score. He scored an own goal. But yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. I think it's obviously not going to be an easy game. Dan Burn starting obviously with Schär against Wolves, so Burn's a bit of a mainstay with Schär at the back. Obviously, Kraft coming in, like I say, for Kraft coming in for Schär when he was suspended. Kieran Trippier obviously not getting in the starting 11 at the moment, but he did come off the bench against Wolves. Lewis Hall, obviously, I think that move's permanent now from Chelsea, and obviously Livramento. Obviously, Hall being a left back, Livramento being a right back. Longstaff, Gamera, Joelinton, it's a good midfield. Murphy, Gordon, Isaac up front, with the options of Barnes to come off the bench, and Tonali, who's obviously come back from his long, lengthy sort of absence from the game. Yeah, as you could tell from my tone, that the more I talk about it, the more I think about it, the more I think about this record we've got against Newcastle, the more I don't feel very confident. But at home, Fulham have been pretty good so far this season. If it weren't for a very, very late lapse in concentration against West Ham, we'd have 2 wins from home against Leicester and West Ham. But with this fixture and then Nottingham Forest to come, who obviously beat Liverpool last week, and then we play Man City away before the international break, before then going and playing Aston Villa, and then going to Goodison Park. I just don't like this run of fixtures. But if Fulham were pretty good at keeping out West Ham in terms of the game last week, and I just wonder whether defensively we're getting stronger and stronger. Bassey and Anderson as a back centre back pairing, and then obviously Tete and Robinson on either side of fullback. And I just wonder if we can restrict Newcastle, if we can restrict, let's just say Isak does start, restrict him the way we restricted Antonio against West Ham. We could obviously limit them to chances and hopefully take one of our own. We need Muniz or Raul Jimenez to score. We need our strikers to score. We need a little bit more from Pereira. Lukic has been really, really impressive so far. Anderson was really, really good as well against West Ham. But yeah, I think that's the end of my preview. I think Fulham, I'm going to back us to win. I don't think it'll be easy at all. I really respect Newcastle as a team. They've come on leaps and bounds since that bloody game we just looked back on against Fulham when Steve Bruce was in charge. Goodness me. Andy Carroll. That was like when we looked at West Ham last week and we saw Samir Nasri on the bench for West Ham back in like 2019, I think it was. And obviously that was only a year before that game we just looked at just now, the 1-1 draw at St James's Park. Thank you so much for watching. For YouTube subscribers, thank you so much. For 600 subscribers, we're trying to hit 650 and 700 and more. We've obviously we do stuff on the Patreon as well, like I say every day. The links there are in the description of this video. They're in all my socials as well. We'd really love some more subscribers on the Patreon, because it's just a really, really unique service that follows Fulham, and obviously me being a fan and a journalist, I get to give my fan opinion as well as a journalistic spin on things as well. Like I say, we'll be at the press conference tomorrow speaking with Marco Silva. We round up the press conference by giving our thoughts afterwards as well, and then just a lot of bonus footage and stuff that you wouldn't usually see from a journalist who covers Fulham. So that is why it's worth subscribing. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. This has been, a 20-minute preview. I've done a lot of talking. Obviously, I'm on my own, so thank you very much for listening. Please do put in the comments below what you think is going to happen in this game. Newcastle fans as well. I'm not, this is not a YouTube page where I don't know what comments are like. I know what football's like. People love to, take the piss and abuse and blah, blah, blah. But we really want to keep it clean here, because I'm not really coming here with an agenda thinking that I'm just, I've got my Fulham hat on, therefore I think Fulham are going to do this and do that. I just think we might win against Newcastle. That's why I've said we might win. I don't necessarily think we will win, but you've got to back your team. If you don't like what I've said, don't take it personally. I'm sure Newcastle will give us a good game. I saw a couple of people comment below after we lost to Preston and just thought, it's not I don't really want that on my YouTube channel, but I can't really stop it at the same time. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for being here. We'll speak on Sunday reviewing the game. For Patreon members, we will obviously speak tomorrow for the press conference and the under-21s as well. Thank you so much for watching and enjoy your weekend. Come on, Fulham.